Hello, our educators, and thank you so much for joining us for this online summer conference just for you. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about the three I's, my opinion, of meaningful online curriculum design: intuitive, innovative, and invigorating. And I'm using the children's building blocks here as a bit of a metaphor because we are building curriculum, whether that is face to face, online, or intuitive. And my goal today is to help prepare you for whatever we're going to be coming across this fall. So, without further ado, let's get into it. My name is Sarah Ackerman, and I'm recently sinking into a new job, a new position myself at Ball State University as their Executive Director of Teaching Innovation, where I work with all faculty members, not just art educators, on ways to enhance the learning experience for students, whether they're face to face, online, or in hybrid situations. I'm really passionate about education, and prior to Ball State, I worked with Eastern Illinois, University of Missouri, in the Art of Education, building and facilitating robust curriculum in all different capacities. But I've also worked K-12. My very first teaching job, I was at a high school teaching photo, and I absolutely loved it. And I've also gained international experience. I taught K through 8 in Zurich, Switzerland, and learned so much during my time there. So I'm coming to you with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement, but some diverse experiences from K through adult and ways that we can shift our mindset when we need to shift it. These are my goals for today's session. I want to help you feel prepared for whatever might come this fall. So if we've learned anything from this last academic year, from March onward, is that we need to be able to be flexible and to pivot if absolutely necessary. And so I want to proactively support you in not only optimistically thinking about, what you're going to do with your students face to face in the fall, but I want to help you prepare should you need to shift to remote learning yet again in a really good proactive way. I want to secondly assure you that you're not alone in this adventure. If we've learned anything from this community of art educators, is that art educators are amazing. We've come together in such an amazing way to support one another, to share ideas, to strategize in the online art teachers group. And I really hope that that continues. I hope you continue to use that as a resource. Of course, I'm going to share a ton of strategies and examples for creating intuitive, innovative, and invigorating online course curriculum. But beyond that, I want to continue to support you in any which way that you may need. I'm going to share my contact with you, my personal email. I want to continue the conversation, not only in the thread associated with this particular session of our online conference. Let's share ideas, ask questions in that thread. But even far beyond, I want to continue to serve you, to strategize with you and support you, no matter what the future might bring. So, ability to pivot. I don't know about you, but this word pivot has become a big buzzword in my communities. It's like the word of the day, the word of the week, the word of the year, being able to pivot. And our recent circumstances with COVID-19, the pandemic, has forced all of us to be even more flexible and even more transparent with our teaching and our goals for learners. And of all the communities that I follow, I've been most impressed by the flexibility and transparency of the art educators, especially in our Facebook group page. I've never witnessed such an outpouring of sharing of resources from you guys, and I hope that that continues far beyond this initial reason for pivoting. In my current role, and hopefully you can see Stretch Armstrong here, and I'm not hiding, hovering over his face. I'm dating myself a little bit with that reference. But I just want to reiterate the flexibility of this group. At Ball State, we have been adopting the term high flex as we look ahead towards fall semester. High flex, and there's a lot of different versions of these sorts of hybrid words. But the way we're looking at high flex, and that term has been around for a long time, since the early 2000s, and a high flex curriculum in the truest sense is a curriculum that can be taught face to face on and online simultaneously, and students can pivot. They can bounce between those modalities based on how they learn best and their circumstances. It's very learner choice based. The way we're using it, it's not necessarily in the true learner choice based, but we're prepping for a high flex model. We're prepping our content for face to face, simultaneously prepping the content for online delivery. So in the instance where we might fall into another remote learning situation, we're prepared for anything. And that's what I'm recommending for us in K-12, is to prepare for anything, um, so that we can ensure that the learning continues to happen for our students. I'm going to share the slide deck for this, which is hyperlinked throughout. So you can click on HighFlex, you can click on BlendFlex to see what other institutions are saying about their approaches. You might be even using some of these terms in your own school district. But what I encourage you to do is to get really clear about how your school district is approaching these terms, if they are. So adoption for K-12, what I'm promoting in this particular session is to prepare for anything. And I know it's a lot of work. I'm not ignoring that fact. But if we are preparing for potential face-to-face delivery, our regular curriculum, while simultaneously preparing online courses, that will put us in a really good position if we have another wave of things. But at the same time, I think there's some hidden benefits to this as well. As I said, we are becoming so much more transparent in our own community by sharing resources, sharing lessons in the Facebook group page. But I've also had great conversations with fellow teachers where they're saying, now that I have my curriculum on my school learning management system, or I'm sharing choice boards on my school webpage, all of a sudden parents and other people are talking about, wow, art really is something. Look at all of the work that goes into teaching art. So in that way, I'm promoting this as an advocacy measure. The more transparent we can be with our curriculum, the more we can convince the people around us, the other key players around us, to see what our value is. So I see it as a good way moving forward. So my recommendation before we get into those 3 I's, prepare for absolutely anything for fall. And I'm not saying you have to prepare everything over the course of the summer. When I'm working with faculty members, I tell them, shoot for 2 weeks ahead of your students. So you're prepared for the here and now, but you're just a little bit ahead of the game with your students. You can build and revise and revisit curriculum as you move through it. Prepare for absolutely anything, assume the best intentions. If we are in a position where we have to go back into quarantine, stress is going to go back up. I think stress is already up because people are worried about being in the classroom. They're worried about exposing themselves to the virus. Assume the best intentions, assume that people are going to be worried and concerned, and go with the flow. Go with an open mind and an open heart, as I know all of you art teachers will. Use your hard work to your advantage. These last couple of weeks, so in March, when all of this started to hit the fan, so to speak, many of you started creating content, whether it was digital choice boards or building things within an available learning management system. You probably have some content to work with. Revisit that content, see what you want to keep, what you can reuse in the upcoming year in your online curriculum space. Revisit things that maybe didn't go so well, or put them into a folder for later consideration if you don't want to use them in the here and now. But see what you've already got ready to go based on your recent experiences. And then finally, follow the 3 I's of meaningful online curriculum design as defined by me. So let's dive into those I's. Intuitive, innovative, and invigorating. These are things that I keep in mind when I'm designing online courses for any of my students, or when I'm tweaking my face-to-face courses to be delivered in an online capacity. I want them to be intuitive, innovative, but also invigorating. What do I mean by intuitive? Well, learners need guidance, not only in what to learn, but how to learn. And I think of it this way: when I start out a new year with students, I'll give my high school photography students as an example. Those first class sessions, before we could even dive into using the camera and creating photos, my students had some other learning to do. Like, how do they enter the space? What do they need to do when they first enter the space? How do they engage with the equipment? How do they engage with me and with their peers? All of these things that are just beyond the art creation piece, but it helps the classroom management side of things. It helps students get into a groove of expectation, what to expect when they're learning from you in the art classroom. And this is especially true in an online situation. So if you take the same concerns of starting in a face-to-face classroom, that can almost feel even bigger in an online space. When a student logs into your classroom website or your classroom LMS, it can be overwhelming. They need to know, where do I start? Where do I go? How do I go about getting the information I need in order to do what my teacher wants me to do? So when I'm thinking about shifting my courses online and creating an intuitive classroom space, I think about the Scooby-Doo sandwich, ironically. And I sandwich my content. So the two pieces of bread are kind of the bookends. The top piece of the bread is I provide an overview. I provide statements summarizing the goals of that particular lesson. The bottom piece of the bread is the follow-up. Any critical conversation. Did you hit all of these things in order to be successful within this particular lesson? And then everything in between, that's the meat and potatoes. So we've got the resources, we've got the directions, we got the turn it in capabilities, and we've got all of the things that the students are going to engage with in order to learn. But I know this about myself. I know I get really excited about curriculum development. And for a lot of people, the Scooby-Doo sandwich is going to be really overwhelming. So I take a step back and I turn that into a cocktail sandwich. What are the bare bones? What are the bare essentials for students to engage with in order to be successful in this lesson? I still have my bread. I still have my bookends where I summarize the learning, and then I follow up and I provide some overarching observations at the end. But I minimize the meat and cheese and condiments in the middle. I'm still engaging students in content, whether it's video of me or video of someone else, directions, websites, resources galore. I'm still giving them directions, but it's in a more compact size. Here's another view of what each of my modules look like. I use the term modules when I'm designing my content. And in my particular instance, I'm creating weekly modules. So every week I have one of these bite-sized sandwiches. Depending upon your classroom situation and your student schedule, you might have daily modules, you may have weekly modules, what have you. But what we're essentially doing is we're packaging learning. And I'm going to show you some specific examples here. So in addition to thinking about how I'm chunking out knowledge, and here's one of my courses. You can see each week I have a folder with this module content. Sometimes when I have a little bit more time on my hands, I create icons for each of those weeks. But certainly you don't need that. Think about what the minimum product that your students need in order to engage and be successful. Here's one I'm going to click over so that you can see one of those weekly folders teased out. And you can see here, I number my steps, so it's super clear to students. Do this, watch this, read this, make this, turn this in. The more transparent you can get, the better. The more simplified you can get, the better. Don't get wordy. Don't get extreme with your descriptions here. Be simplistic and to the point. In my situation, I'm building my online course content in Canvas, which is a learning management system, an LMS for short. I've worked with other ones like Schoology, D2L, Blackboard, and all of these learning management systems work very similarly. They are the place where you build your course content. Some have more bells and whistles than others, but it's a safe place for you to build your content and a safe place for students to go in and add content to the class, to submit things. In my classes, step 4, for example, here, share your work with the class. My classes, my students submit things via discussion board. While it can't totally replace a critique, it's one of the next best bets for getting students to share their artwork and talk to each other about their artwork. So in my classes, everything's very transparent. Students turn things in, everyone in the class can see their work and they can talk about it. Now, I know not everyone might have access to a learning management system like Google Classroom even. So you might be deploying your course content in other ways, like through a hyperlinked document or even a Google document. Even if you're taking this approach, I encourage you to employ some of the strategies I talked about earlier. Be very straightforward, be simple, number things out, make it really clear for students what you want them to do and how you want to go about doing it. These are some great examples from my friend Jen with the Illinois Art Education Association, where she's showing students step by step how to go about learning, how to go about creating their artifacts and turning things in. Here's another example from my friend Amy Nyworth. She is one of our up and coming stars in the Online Art Educators Facebook group page, and she's been creating these wonderful choice boards for her students and sharing them with us. And you can share choice boards with your students and they can be hyperlinked like Amy's is here. But what I really love about this is, again, she's stepping things out, making things really clear, not only for students, but for potential family members who might be helping their students engage with their regular course content. But with the element of choice here, it's building students up as artists. So there's a lot of ways that you can communicate expectations with students through an LMS, which I really recommend. Maybe it's a course website, maybe it's a Google document, maybe it's choice boards. Something to keep in mind, if you're using one of the latter alternatives and not a learning management system, is you'll want to have a good, candid conversation with your administration and your team leaders about student protections. So the benefits of using a learning management system is that if it's through your school, it's been approved from a FERPA standpoint. So students are safe to engage and talk to each other inside of an LMS. When you go outside of that space, it's harder to protect those students. So while you might be open to sharing videos and sharing your tools, you really have to think about safe ways for students to get their information to you and their studio projects to you. So sit down, have a good conversation about how that can look for your students and how to keep them safe at the same time. So in all of this, with this first I in mind, we want to strive to be flexible, but also consistent. So the consistency piece here is once you find a sandwich model, an order of operations that works for you, and you lay it out for your students, stick with that kind of recipe of how you communicate tools and resources and expectations. Because if you get that out of the way and you're consistent along the way, students become familiar with that pattern, then they don't even think about the pattern, they think about the content. But at the same time, speaking of content, if you're consistent in steps and how you present information from students, you also want to be flexible in the content piece. So just as if you were in a face-to-face lesson and say you teach photo, like I taught high school photo, and inevitably I would teach 3 sections of photo 1, and I would start them all out at the same level, but then some classes would dive deeper. You have to ebb and flow with your students, what they need from you in that moment. And you might see that students really start to engage with a particular topic or approach, and you want to build in your own flexibility to look at your online curriculum just as you would your traditional and make small tweaks so that you can keep students motivated. Now, speaking of motivation, let's talk about the second I, that is innovation. Why is it important? By planning innovative and exciting lessons for students, regardless of if you're face-to-face or online, you can inspire the innovators of tomorrow. And in so many ways, the arts are saving us and our students, but we want to continue to promote the arts as a great tool to help students with problem solving, design thinking, creative thinking, all of these things. And we can continue to do that even if we're in an online remote scenario. I want to share, I'm going to be sharing a lot of resources and particular lesson ideas in this section when it comes to innovation. And if you haven't seen this article, click on it when you open up the PDF to check it out. And it's just a good, heartfelt, good read. And it's about a family, some parents who came across an art piece that was drawn on a wall in their home. And instead of responding maybe how a lot of parents might with anger or frustration, they highlighted the artwork, framed it, put up a placard as if it were in a museum. And I thought, what a wonderful experience for that child, turning that into a teachable moment, but also how timely, because we were in a scenario where our students were no longer safe in our classrooms. We no longer had the opportunity to physically talk, to face-to-face talk about one another's artwork. We're still able to do that in an online capacity, but we're losing the face-to-face piece. Something I want us to think about is who is face-to-face with our students at home. Those are family members, close friends, people that are in the vicinity. And as I think about this small child who drew on their wall, I thought, what a learning opportunity for those parents to sit down and say, hey, let's showcase this creation. I think there's great ways that students can become, they can start the conversation at home by presenting their artwork and engaging their family and people around them in meaningful conversations. And it doesn't take much. I'm including here a Post-it show resource. So even if students create a mini art museum, a mini gallery in their space, for the people in their lives, or in the case of the Gerbil Museum, the pets in their lives, they can take small steps to beautify their space, but also engage in some good conversation. And speaking of conversation, there's some innovative ways that you can get family members talking about children's art. I'm adapting that from the art class curator. They have created this wonderful printable PDF of question cards. And I've taken those cards, I've added them to a slide deck in Google that you can copy and use to your heart's content. I've also put these into a VoiceThread deck for you. If you aren't familiar with VoiceThread, this is a digital tool that you can pull up on your computer or handheld device, and people can record their commentary. They can write, they can type their commentary, they can contribute a video, they can do an audio commentary. And the thinking here is that students, if they're creating innovative artwork at home, invite them to even if it's temporary, hang that work, display that artwork, and then give them tools like these question cards to ask their family members, what do they think about that artwork? And help them document it and share it out so that you can continue the conversation in your space, in your virtual art classroom space. Another thing to think about when it comes to innovating your curriculum is the humanizing piece of this. So in a traditional classroom setting, students benefit from you being able to see and appreciate the artwork, peers being able to see and appreciate their artwork. When we shift to a remote setting, students lose a lot of opportunities to convene and talk with you, to share things with their friends. And I've always been a huge fan of mail art and artist trading cards. In fact, when I was in teaching in Zurich, my Zurich students had American art pals, and they would send artist postcards back and forth. And this created a layer of connection. And I think in the here and now, when people are stuck in their homes or are stuck 6 feet apart from each other, we're craving connection more than anything. So consider an artist trading card project or an artist postcard project. And even if students don't physically drop their artworks in the mail, because that can get expensive with postage, there's other ways that they can share their artwork digitally through social media or through your LMS. That's a great way to innovate your curriculum, but with a humanizing twist. A lot of the lessons that I'm going to share in the next couple of slides employ STEAM and design thinking strategies. And I really want to emphasize design thinking and maker approaches in the here and now, because when you make that shift from classroom to online remote learning, you inevitably lose some access to materials, to resources. And I know there's been great conversation in the board about how to get materials in students' hands, but it just isn't always the case in certain circumstances. So what I love about employing a maker approach is that you can really take tools and materials from your everyday life to create wonderful things. When I was working in Zurich, Switzerland, here's a couple of snapshots from my time working with students in a makerspace at the elementary level. And yeah, we had a lot of different centers, you know, the paint center and centers with more traditional art supplies. A majority of the engagement that students were, it was learner centered. They would choose a challenge they would look at design thinking and they would choose a challenge that they were interested in solving. And then they would use materials from not only around the studio, but they would bring in things to manipulate. And so here, these next couple of slides are really link heavy with lesson ideas, resources, ways to innovate your lessons. And particularly these are great for maker STEAM mindset. We've got STEAM projects that you can employ, and I don't know about you, but anytime that I can engage students in an OK Go video is an instant hit. When I was teaching first grade in Zurich, they would come in saying, Dr. A, can we watch OK Go? And I hardly ever said no, because those videos would inspire so much creative problem solving in my students. I've linked your OK Go sandbox. They now have a great website with lesson ideas, so check it out. Some other lessons that I've employed in my modules with students with a design or maker sensibility in mind. I've shared things like the squirrel obstacle course video or the epic power wheels course video with students, which has turned into wonderful projects and tasks that students have transformed their bedrooms or their homes, their spaces into amazing projects that entice them, that get their peers excited, that get me excited as an educator. In addition, here's another resource when you're thinking about innovating your classroom curriculum in an online space. We've been seeing a lot of themes happen, from the recreate a famous artwork to creating artwork from your dirty laundry. And I don't know if you've seen it, but Old Navy came out with a commercial recently that created this huge piece of artwork from clothing. And this was another whole module that I created for students, where they started out watching this commercial, and then that inspired them to create their own piece, document their own piece with laundry, in some cases dirty and in some cases clean. So we've got lots more resources here. There are museums are doing wonderful things. And I include several museum and art specific resources here that you could easily take and either directly link or link to particular elements of these spaces to inspire students as they work up to a particular artist activity. Art21 is a great resource, and I'm sure you've seen Lunch Doodles with Mo. This would be a great addition to a module that maybe you're building for younger students, where they spend some time working with Mo and then continue their art making experience. Anytime that I can bring other voices, other faces into my online modules, it's a great way to invigorate and innovate. Here we've got a bunch of resources, cross-curricular resources from art museums that can inspire some of your modules, as well as non-art museums. There are some fantastic spaces, and I've had the privilege of actually being able to visit some of these spaces in person. But when we approach, and if we approach another lockdown situation, museums are becoming quite in tune to this and figuring out ways to reach viewers in dynamic ways. And these museums could lend themselves to wonderful lessons, wonderful artful engagements in your modules moving forward. And we've also got some fun things here where they're related because they're interesting, they're creative, they're cartoons and music videos with an artistic twist, but these could very easily inspire and turn into cartoons and illustrations, stop action videos that your students create with a particular theme that you have in mind. We also can consider gamification as a great way to innovate and also invigorate the online classroom space. These are some great games that a lot of them have been created by art museums. And some of them, they would be great ways to start out a history lesson. Spend some time playing around yourself. In addition to being a great release for you and your students, they can also have meaningful implications in your online course modules. So when it comes to this particular eye, you want to make sure that your content, your online content is exciting, but also meaningful. So while you're spending a lot of time making sure that you're presenting information in a consistent way, you're also making sure that every element of your curriculum aligns with your overarching objectives and goals for your students, but with an eye for what is going to be exciting for students, what is going to get them creating and sharing and conversing with the people around them about their artwork and the process that they're using to create their artwork. So we're down to our third eye, invigorating. Why is invigorating important? Learners take in more when they are enjoying the learning process, and so do you as the instructor. Curriculum should be personal, dynamic, and involving. The way I invigorate in my online course modules is by being in them as often as possible. Whenever we make a shift, a future shift to online, once again, students are going to inevitably miss you. You are going to miss your students. And so that's why it's so important to humanize yourself as much as possible. In my online course modules, my students see me a lot, whether I'm in an actual module video or if I'm in a weekly overview video. I'm regularly recording myself through my computer or through my handheld device so that students see me, they know that I continue to be here for them. I know that that probably comes with some stress. I myself really dislike watching any of my videos, and I think a lot of you are in the same boat. But to be honest, I just do it and I just keep doing it, and it never gets easier, but you just kind of get used to creating videos. There are a bunch of resources here for you. I create a lot of my videos on my Mac with QuickTime, but there's great ways to use Zoom and Screencastify and Loom. There's great ways to create videos so that you can humanize, and it could just be a quick video where it's just you, your face, you're talking about the course module, you're humanizing yourself. It could be a demonstration where you prop your phone on a milk crate and you're drawing underneath the milk crate. Students are going to be craving seeing you and hearing your voice. But at the same time, it's super important to not only humanize yourself, but bring in other perspectives. In a lot of ways, when I'm talking to art education students, this is it kind of adds to the street cred that you're trying to build up as an art teacher. So inevitably, especially when I'm working with high school or middle school students, you might hear something like, yeah, we've heard this. This is just you. But when you can bring in other voices that have a similar similar message, sometimes it just makes it click for students like, oh, okay, I really should try that out. In my classes, I'm honestly recording people, I'm interviewing people, but there's so many wonderful resources through YouTube and Hulu of people sharing their experiences and artists. So in addition to humanizing yourself, think about ways that you can bring in other voices and other faces regularly. But you cannot, and even if you can't find a lot of external voices, there's ways that you can shake things up when it comes to your own messaging. So I will do a lot of videos with my students, but then sometimes I'll shake it up and create a chatter box for students, depending upon a theme that week or a particular art piece that we're exploring. These are some of the chatter boxes that I've created in the past, and Chatterbox is an app where you can animate a picture. You can add your voice over it. So there was one week I literally came to my students as Sonic the Hedgehog. And one week where I came to my students as this cute little monster in the middle. This is an invigorating way to grab your students' attention while also giving it a thematic twist. All right, so more invigorating ways to engage your students. Holly Best Kincaid, she is one of the team leaders on the OAT team, and she is such an inspiration when it comes to Bitmoji. I've learned so much from her, and I've created my own Bitmoji for my classes. And the Bitmoji is very invigorating for me because I can kind of geek out and create these interactive spaces where you can add audio, you can add video to engage with your students. But it also, it adds a layer of humanization. Even though you are clearly communicating with your students, you're doing it under this playful layer. And that is a wonderful thing to consider as you're thinking about ways to invigorate the online classroom space. But overall, we want to make sure that when it comes to this invigorating, that we're energizing our students, but we're also mindful of the need to occasionally calm them down, knowing a lot of the stressors that are surrounding us. And so the next couple of slides, I want to share some invigorating yet calming lesson plan ideas that you might employ. The first lesson idea is a behind the door activity. And this is something that students can do in a sketchbook or with 2 pieces of paper. And the idea here is they create a drawing of a door and they cut out that door so it opens up. And underneath is some emotion that they're communicating in a visual way. And here, this example, I'm sharing some of my frustration in the here and now. This is a great way for students it's a great lesson for students to be practicing their drawing skills, but also communicating some of their feelings within. Another invigorating lesson I've employed, it's the inside the jar activity. And for young kiddos, I would provide a template sort of like this one here, but older students, you could have them create their own object, their own capsule. And the idea here is to create inside of their capsule a space. In my case, I created a safe space. So in the here and now, when I'm feeling stressed, whether it's because of the virus or shifting to an online mindset, I take a moment, I catapult myself into this beautiful Swiss background to kind of chill and be mindful of where my feelings are taking me. Here's another invigorating lesson, and I've shared this. I won't spend too much time on this because I shared this in my last presentation at OAT, but I got such great feedback. This is the constellating the unconscious, and I've been doing a lot of these on my own, actually. They're very relaxing and addicting almost, but I open up a sketchbook page, I just put a bunch of dots, I connect the dots, then I take a step back and look for shapes, and then start drawing in the shapes that I see. And a lot of my drawings have a pandemic twist, and I think a lot of your students might as well. And so in that way, it can be a good artful lesson, but with an added element of reflection. How are students getting through the here and now? So this was my finished piece. And as I said, I've been creating a lot of these. So here's a bunch of constellating unconscious pieces on my end. And I think it's a great activity for students. So we've talked about a lot of different things when it comes to online curriculum design. And as you can see, a lot of the things that we've talked about are good practice overall. So whether you're sitting down and reflecting on your traditional face-to-face curriculum, or you're making the shift to create both at the same time to proactively plan, these are the things, whether traditional or online, you want to be flexible, but also consistent. You want to be exciting, but also meaningful for students. You want to be energizing, but also calming. I think these are all really good lessons to keep in mind as we look towards an unknown future for all of us. Now, that being said, this unknown future, whatever the future might bring, I want to continue to offer my support, whether it's just moral support or if you want to get in touch and talk through some ideas that you have to help prepare for fall, whatever that might bring for us. I'm an open book. I'm sharing with you my email address. We're going to be in touch on the Facebook thread here, but this is an open invitation. Let's continue the conversation about meaningful curriculum, whatever the modality. I am here for you. I'm excited for you, and let's continue the conversation. Thanks for joining me in the online conference today. Bye.